Welcome back to the Raw Christian Men's Podcast, where we tackle the topics that are most important to the Christian men. On this episode, we are discussing sexual temptation and the dangerous hold that it has on men. Off camera, we have Luke Rude coming back and joining us, and we have two new faces here in the studio. You guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'm Bill Collins, minister at Walton Christian Church.
I'm Colton Young, a student at Lewis Cass High School.
So, sexual temptation. We'll start off, just try to define it, right? I would say any temptation or urges someone faces involving sexual interaction with someone outside of marriage. So premarital sex, homosexuality, adultery, stuff like that. Would you guys pretty much agree? You want to add to, take away?
Yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Okay. And it's not just urges that are acted upon, right? I mean, it's
Right.
stuff that floods our minds daily. And in today's day and age, it's increased. We just talked about this off air. From when I was younger compared to what you're facing, it's night and day. And it's unfortunately becoming more socially acceptable. So some statistics. Like I said, past podcast, excuse me. I have a very analytical brain. I like to think things through. Statistics help me out with that. So 11% of men self-identify as being addicted to pornography. 69% of those men view pornography online, and men are 20% more likely than women to download pornography. So that's probably the main urge, and then that would lead to lusting after someone. And I would say personally, in my journey, where I've struggled, I was introduced to pornography at a younger age, and it gets a foothold. And that's something that I've struggled with as I grew up and as a younger adult, and even leading into, I would say even now, like you still feel urges to, it still pulls at you. Even though you're not doing it, you still feel that constant pull. So I would like to get your guys' thoughts on, as far as pornography, it's pretty, it's, like I said, it's pretty socially acceptable nowadays. So let's start off with that.
Well, probably my first exposure was probably elementary school. Found a Playboy that my dad had in the house. Looked through it, and the images are ingrained in your mind. I mean, I can tell you what that woman looked like, and that's always, you talk about it always being on your mind. When you're in those moments when everything's quiet and there's nobody around, your mind wanders. And I find myself every once in a while going back to that. And it's surprising at how much that idea of sex, either in marriage or outside of marriage, consumes our mind.
Yeah.
The first time I saw, it wasn't really like porn, but it was like the soft porn. It was like in video games. You see it on movies and TV and social media. It's just, but then when you see like real porn for the first time, it's just horrible. I don't know. It's just a bad feeling. It feels like you're doing something wrong, but you can't like seem it. I don't know. It's just, I'm not sure how to really put it in.
I think you're on the right track. But it's something that you definitely know is wrong, but we're sinful by nature, right? Once it gets that foothold, we're human, we're sinful, we're going to have that pull. And unfortunately, the only way to really combat it is to just not be exposed to it to begin with. And I think we might be at that point in our society where it's inevitable. It might not be to the extent of like the hardcore stuff. But like you said, it's in video games, it's in movies, it's in stuff that we are specifically targeting kids with.
Right.
So it's getting ingrained in them at a very, very young age. Even if it isn't necessarily quote unquote pornography, it's definitely sexual in nature. So it's, I mean, you got 6, 7, 8-year-olds that are getting exposed to this stuff, and it's a gateway, and it will lead to the more hardcore stuff unless you have that, that person or that spiritual life that will kind of help guide you in the right direction, guide you away from that pole.
Well, it's hard. It's so hard to get away from because your commercials. I mean, advertisers learned a long time ago sex sells.
Yes.
I can remember years ago there was a commercial lady putting on a really tight pair of jeans, and I have no idea what product was being sold. It wasn't the jeans, and I had no idea. It was like, holy cow! I can't believe that sells whatever, and then you have to be the product that you're looking at.
That's what you are then associating that product with what you just saw. So,
Right.
You're definitely going to want to gravitate toward that product. Excuse me. Nowadays, it doesn't even have to be like your more traditional, I'd say traditional with quotes, pornographic sources. Like before, you brought up your first exposure was with a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
Same with me. I found an old magazine, and then you can maybe find an old videotape or something like that. Now you have a computer that you carry around in your pocket constantly. And even if you're not bringing up those adult sites, you still have social media, which is becoming more and more socially acceptable, having that kind of stuff or that material on social media. Good luck scrolling Instagram without coming across, some, or TikTok or anything without coming across, some scantily clad women dancing or doing some other stuff that they know is going to attract your mind toward that, toward those sexual urges. So, Luke, you have anything to add to this so far?
No. Well, I do agree with that. Social media is probably a major factor in majority of it as well. 'Cause I know, I haven't personally seen this, but I know just from people telling me, a lot of people like to advertise their OnlyFans through social media, which that's another site that should be avoided.
Yeah.
So, as far as sexual temptation, we can ask ourselves, why is it bad? Sexual sin is internal to our own body rather than outside, right? It's one of those things that we can kind of struggle with, but it's an internal struggle that you can keep hidden away from everybody else. But our bodies are supposed to be a temple for God. God's supposed to dwell within us. So how are we supposed to have God dwelling in us when we're also filling it with, the lustful images or lustful videos?
Right. The thing I think about is that one of the things that we have to do, train ourselves to do, is that when those thoughts come across our mind about looking at a woman and you realize, you're staring at her or something, I've learned just recently to tell myself no, because that's not what I want. Lust is, Jesus talked about lust.
Yes.
And we can look at a woman that's scantily clad, and they don't even have to be scantily clad if they're just well built. Mm-hmm. Then that thought comes. As soon as you realize that thought's there, you have to tell yourself no. And I found that to be powerful. I've got 4 daughters, and I've been walking through the mall behind them before and watched how guys look at them.
Yeah.
And then watch guys turn around. And I've been known to step over in front of that guy
Yeah. And do you feel like that's helped you though? Like, cause that's something that you can kind of think about, like when maybe your mind's drifting in that direction, and then you can kind of refer back to, having 4 daughters.
Right.
Like, would I want somebody else thinking about my daughters in this way?
Right. Yeah, I found myself when I first started realizing how other guys were looking at my girls. Found myself when I had the thought going, "That's somebody's daughter."
Yeah.
They feel just like about their daughter the same way I feel about mine, and there's times I thought, well, if somebody else had that thought about my girls, I'd probably rip them apart.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm going to go off topic just a little bit, or not off topic, but off the script just a little bit. One thing I've thought about a lot is like trying to find that line, because, as men, we're going to be attracted to pretty women.
Right.
At what point? I'm trying to figure out what the point is where you're crossing over from like being attracted and admiring to lusting after.
Right.
It's not that maybe that initial look. It would be.
It's when you stop it's the second glance. It's when you stop to dwell on what it would be like to be with her, or your desire is to have her. You've crossed the line. I mean, you're right. We are attracted by beauty. Guys are visual.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us are. And I don't know of a guy that doesn't struggle in some way with this idea. And so we have to know where to set that line. And it's the second look. It's that thought, I wonder what it would be like if. And once we hit that moment, then we are over on the other side.
Yeah.
Because the more we dwell on it, the more that starts to consume us. And we have to watch that. Because what we dwell on, what we think about, becomes the way we act. And it's scary. We treat our girlfriends differently if we're lusting after somebody else, or our wives, and we see them differently. Having had the 4 girls, image is big to them. What do they want to doll themselves up? They want to be attractive, and they know that there are guys out there that are looking at this other stuff, and they can't match up to it. Physically, it's just impossible to match up with a model that's been airbrushed.
Yeah.
In a magazine or on a movie, with the way they can do the technology and sharpen all that up. It's not fair to them when we allowed lust to take over in our lives.
Yeah. I think back, biblically, my mind gravitates toward David, right? When he's up on the rooftop,
All right.
looks across, sees Bathsheba.
Bathsheba.
Thank you. Bathing. It wasn't that first look.
Right.
It was when he turned around and he had that second look, and that's when the thoughts started creeping in.
Right.
So that's something that I've struggled with. I've struggled with lust for a long time. And as I was fighting through it, and you can't help but notice, attractive women. Like, I find myself like looking the other direction, because I trying not to cross that line. And I was still trying to figure out where, again, you try to admire God's creation. I admire the beauty, but try not to cross the line. And I'm taking myself out of situations or looking the other way. And it's not like it's in your mind. You're kind of like, well, this is kind of ridiculous that I'm doing this. This is or kind of extreme.
That's an indicator that you've crossed that line. To note and to see the beauty is not crossing the line. It's when your conscience says, wait a minute, then you have definitely crossed that line, and you've maybe not even done anything wrong. What I like is that you said you turned your head.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to flee from evil and not look, and so, or not dwell on. So when we do that, when you're turning your head, you're making a conscious decision, one, to honor God, and two, to honor the young lady or woman,
Yeah.
and then to honor your wife. That, I mean, it's all so tied in together that we really have to be careful. And I had a buddy one time said he was looking at a woman. He was driving car. His wife's beside him, and he's looking, and he turned his head toward her, not away. And as he was turning his head, he ended up looking right into the eyes of his wife, and he knew he'd messed up. Because you could see the hurt in her face, and that's something we need to be aware of. Our job as guys is to protect the women, whether we're dating or whether we're married, to protect them and to protect their reputation. So we don't want to step over a sexual line of any type. I mean, I think kissing's fine. I've got a hard time. I look at heavy petting differently.
Yes.
That's crossing a line because you know where you're heading with that. So, it's always been something we have to be aware. And I try to make my girls aware of it. When they went out the door, I'd say, "Hey, wait a minute." And what I always told them was, if a guy can see it, he thinks he can touch it.
Yep.
So, if you're wearing short shorts, he's going to put his leg up as high as he can. And you don't want to put that thought there because you don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah. And that leads right into like the next thought I had, like, why do men suffer from sexual temptation as bad as we do? And I mean, I feel like for men, like you said, we're very visual. We're very, as far as like, I say tactile, like we like physical touch. We like the visual, we like the senses. It's not necessarily as emotional as you might find with women. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think probably emotionally, it harms them more than it does us. But yeah, I think because we are so visual, I mean, it's just,
I guess I'm thinking more of like if you're thinking about the connection with somebody, men are more of like a physical nature of connection, whereas women are more of like an in-depth emotional connection.
Right. Well, the men spell intimacy sex.
Yeah.
For us, and if you're married in a relationship, sex is what, when you have sex, you think, this woman loves me, I love her. That's intimacy for us. Whereas our wives, talking is part of that. They want to know that they're listened to, that they're respected. And so we have a difference there as far as the sexes are concerned. So it's important to learn that listening skill.
Yeah.
Because that's what says intimacy to them.
And do you have anything? I mean, you're awfully quiet right now. I don't want it to just be like a one-way conversation. So
when you talked about like how it's so like thrown in our face, or the last point you drew up, I think it's thrown in our face in every like direction people look in, and it's like in social media. That's such a big part of people's lives, like especially kids, people my age. Like they connect through Snapchat, which is horrible. You can just send pictures of yourself to anyone. It's on Instagram. You see models and actors, actresses, athletes you can see, and then it's just everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, it's horrible. I feel like for my generation, it's just thrown in every direction they look, because social media is like, a lot of people are on social media and spend a lot of their time on social media. And I think that's a horrible way to exploit. I think it's exploiting young men, but also I think it's horrible for women as well. But yeah.
And unfortunately, with not just with social media, but even going back to like pornography, it's creating very unrealistic expectations of like for men and for young men of what something should be like.
Right.
Which it very rarely, I would say never is. So you got to be very careful when you're viewing that stuff. You shouldn't be viewing it. Let me say that. But when somebody, especially younger, who hasn't experienced anything like an intimate connection in real life, they're going to think that's the way that it should be.
Yep.
And then when they go into and they find that spouse and they do start having an intimate connection and it's nothing like it, in their mind, they're let down and they think, well, this is nothing like it should have been, nothing like I thought it was going to be. And then it's going to affect the way that you treat your spouse or how you look at other women, and ultimately could lead to, termination of the marriage. So that's something you got to be very, very careful about. And if the topic ever comes up and I'm talking to younger guys, that's one of the things that I try to say is like, just don't even try to get into it, like, because it creates that evil foothold, but it creates such an unrealistic expectation, like within your head of what something should be. So, Luke, you got anything to add?
This would mainly just reiterate on the points you guys already made. So,
No.
So you went. The question earlier was where does this all begin for us as guys, and why are we? We have to understand God created sex. I mean, he made a man and a woman.
Yeah.
He said, "Go and procreate, fill the earth," and he made it to be enjoyable.
Yes.
And especially in a monotonous, is that the right word? Monotonous.
Monogamous.
Monogamous. Thank you. No, not monogamous. Okay. But in that type of a relationship, it's far better than what you could expect anywhere else. People that have had multiple sex partners never find a true satisfaction. They're always longing, wondering if there's somebody else out there.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're committed to a relationship, this is it. This is my wife. I've made a commitment, a covenant, to love her forever. Then our hearts are turned towards that. But when man sinned, it affected every relationship he had. I mean, immediately there's a difference between Adam and Eve and God. We find that before sin, they were naked, but they didn't have any shame.
Yeah.
As soon as they sin, they cover themselves, and then they feel a guilt, a shame that's there, and that's what sin does to all of us.
Yeah. And Satan, I mean, he knows what our weaknesses are, what our most vulnerable areas are. So, especially like you just said, God made sex for a husband and wife to be able to enjoy together. So it's obviously an enjoyable act. Sin crept into the world. He's gonna automatically attack that.
Yep.
And it's just going to be more of the physical feeling of it rather than the connection part of it that you're supposed to have with your spouse.
Right.
So. And I going back to what you were saying earlier, I caught it, just a little bit of it, where you're talking about when we're faced with that sexual temptation. I believe it's one of the only things that when the Bible references that we're not supposed to fight it. We're not supposed to try to, sit there and attack. We're supposed to flee from it.
Flee. Yep.
We are not capable of trying to fight that temptation. It's a losing battle.
Right.
Like I think you just have to completely flee from it, completely take yourself out of the situation, and then it'll take care of itself. But if you just kind of put it off in the corner and you're like, I can battle through this, you're always going to go back to it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I struggled with for a long time early on. Like as far as like pornography goes, I'd always justify it. It got the foothold in early, and then it was so socially acceptable. Then I say where it really started creating a problem would be when, like in the military, go overseas, you're separated from your wife.
Right.
You don't want, I mean, like I'm not going to be, in my mind, I'm telling myself, I'm not going to be unfaithful. So I'll just go to porn. And that's the way I justified it.
Right.
And then, so you're watching, and it's still, I mean, it's having the same cancerous effect on your insides. But it just, that's how I justified it in my mind. It's like, well, I'm not cheating. You know, I'm not doing what some of these other guys are going around doing. I'm just doing this off on the side on my own.
Right.
And I think that that's something that we, as men, will find ourselves doing. We'll justify it a lot. Just so, I don't know if it's so we can feel better about it or so we know it's wrong, but we're like, well, it might be okay because of this, or, you know, would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd also like to say, I know some people just in high school, we had a conversation on whether prostitution should be legalized or whatever. One of the main arguments was they see prostitution, some people see prostitution of a married man, like a married guy goes and gets a prostitute. They see that as like cheating. Same people also say a guy watching pornography while married is another sign of cheating as well.
I'm of the mind now where I would agree with that. Like,
Yeah.
any time that you're really giving in to that sexual temptation or sexual sin, urge, whatever it is, I don't care if you're going and you're being promiscuous with another woman, or if you're going into a locked room with your cell phone. I mean, you're still taking that attention away from your spouse. Or that's if you're married, and if you're not married, you're still, you can't say it's anything other than lusting after that woman on that screen.
Right.
So like, I used to not think that way. But again, I think it's going back to me justifying my actions at the time. Where now it's like, anything outside of the intimate connection with your spouse, I would throw in there with adultery.
I would agree. Jesus said if you lust after a woman, you've already committed adultery with her. So yeah, he equates it the same way. And the reason we rationalize things away, it's human. It's human nature. You know, I can justify why I do something and then condemn a guy that I know is doing the exact same thing. Because I have my reasons to make it right. He doesn't. So.
And did you have something to say? I don't want to.
I was just agreeing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a thought, and it just left me. Yeah. I didn't realize, I guess, I don't know if it was just something that I was being attacked with or whatever, but like I didn't realize that it was as big of a problem even within the church as it really is.
No.
And when I was going through it, I mean, you're being convicted by the Holy Spirit. You know it's wrong, but you think that you're the only one that's struggling with it. Like I'm a Christian. I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't what a Christian man should be doing. And then you look at all these other men that out there that you look up to, and you're like, there's no way that they're doing. And then you start digging in a little bit. I'm like, it's a major issue that a lot of Christian men, unfortunately, are fighting behind closed doors.
Right.
And I think they're thinking the same thing that I was thinking. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. I know it's wrong. There's no way I can talk to anybody about it because the condemnation.
Right.
And I'm the only one that's going through it. You know, have you felt that? Or like, I mean, being a younger man, you're coming up and your late teens now. I mean, the battle is, I would say, like, just getting really strong with you. Like, as far as, like, the attacks.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the best way to go, I try to avoid it as much as possible. Like, the feelings you get when you like the urges you get when you feel the urge to look at porn or anything. I feel like the best, I don't really know how to avoid those urges or feelings. Like, I'm trying to, like, substitute, like, find something else to do, find a way to get around it or avoid it, or try and look at people differently. I think that, like, looking at women differently sometimes can help with urges. But I think it's hard to just straight up, like, you can't get rid of the urges. Like, they're always going to be there, especially how society is today. But I think the best way is to try and avoid all the outlets that make you feel the urge as much as possible.
And I would think the only way to really not have the urges is to not have the foothold put into you to begin with. And unfortunately for you guys and for the generation that are younger than you coming up, and everybody, until something drastically changes within society, it's always going to be there, whether it be like right in your face, which it's a lot more right in your face than what it used to be, or subliminally. Unfortunately, once that foothold gets in there, you're going to be attacked with the urges. Because, like, you see something like, man, I like that. I don't know why, but I like that. And then that's just an opening for, the devil to come in and attack.
Right.
And he's going to keep attacking, like, it's a vulnerability, chink in the armor. So, unless you are never put in that situation to begin with, you're always going to have the urges. It's how you deal with them. And like you said, you just got to take yourself out of the situation. So
I would agree with that. It's you're always going to have the urges. It starts for us as guys when we're in our probably 13, 14, just to hit our teenage years. You start noticing and thinking, and I'm not sure what the current statistic is. Like 10 years ago, the average exposure to porn, even soft porn or hard porn, for a male was the age of 7. And if that's the images you have, they're not going to leave. So we have to decide how we're going to handle those when they come, because urges are always there.
yeah,
I asked a guy one time, he's 80 years old. I said, so, when do these sexual urges leave? And he said, well, I'm 85 and they haven't left yet. So, which I kind of laughed at, but I think he was being serious.
yeah,
It's just, you read the book of Job in the Old Testament, and Job said, I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully upon a woman. And, he's dealing with it. Same thing you and I are dealing with now. Thousands of years later, we're still dealing with it. I think probably from the moment of the first sin, we started dealing with it. So it's always going to be there. It's do I have a strategy, that's going to help me avoid crossing the line? In Job's case, he makes a covenant with his eyes. So when he realizes he's doing that, and we need to understand what a covenant is. Covenant is, in the Old Testament, when people made a covenant, it was usually between two parties, and they split an animal in half, and they walked between the two pieces to seal the covenant. And what they were basically saying is, if I break this covenant, may I be like these animals. May I be slaughtered. So he's saying that to himself. I've made the covenant with my eyes. And if I look lustfully, then may I be like one of these.
yeah.
And, that's a pretty serious commitment, probably one that most of us wouldn't make. but I think it's necessary. Joseph had a plan. When Pharaoh's wife approached him, he ran out.
Ran away.
You know, and we see over and over when you have to have a strategy. Don't put yourself in those situations where you're going to end up crossing a line, because it's too easy once you're in the midst of it to make the wrong choice.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're looking at or thinking about a woman, even just on a commercial, then you need to divert. You talked about diverting activity, doing something else. You need to divert your eyes. You need to divert your mind, because if not, it will consume you. It's just the way it is.
And I don't want to necessarily sound all doom and gloom. I mean, yes, sexual temptation is obviously evil. It's something that we're going to struggle with probably for life. But I think, personally at least, I found that the longer that I've been married, the better of the relationship you have with your spouse, the easier it is to not give in. And I think it's a two-way street. The relationship is going to improve when you really get serious about, like, I want to get rid of this sin in my life. And then you go to God, because you're not going to be able to do it on your own. And that's what it took for me, is like, you go to God. I always say that I had like the wrestling match, like that Jacob had. Right. And it took that. Like, it was like it wasn't necessarily like how I used to pray. It would be almost kind of like just casual walking through it, saying the same prayer, and I'd catch myself doing that, and it took like an intimate like conversation, like what is going on? I'm tired of being this way. I'm tired of going through this. Why do I struggle with this as bad as I do? And like, that's when things started kind of getting clear for me. I actually started, I would say maybe starting to listen finally to what God was trying to tell me. And then, so improving your relationship with God and being serious about getting rid of that sin will innately cause you to look at your spouse in a different light, and it'll help improve your relationship. And then that will help you battle the sexual temptations that you face. They're not going to go away. It's just, how can you make it easier on yourself?
Right.
So, and I don't have all the answers or anything. I'm not trying to say that. That's what's worked for me. That's what I had to go through personally. I would say, as far as sexual temptation and everything, that would be probably the strongest struggle that I've had to face. So this is just what's worked for me. It might not be the same for everybody else, but so the biggest thing is just don't give in to the temptation early on in life, to let that foothold creep in, because every time you do, it's just easier and easier.
Yeah. So. Because it starts to consume you.
I'm sorry?
It starts to consume you.
Oh, it will. It'll tear you apart.
We would have to admit, because it's a sin, in some way it's pleasurable. And the problem with what we're talking about, especially if it's pornography, is that it takes more and more shocking types of things to, you're probably shocked the first time you saw porn.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it becomes commonplace. And for a lot of guys, they got to start digging deeper into other types of pornography, harder pornography. And that pleasure, as it wears off, just leads in a downward
it's a
spiral.
It's, as far as like biologically, it's a dopamine spike.
Yeah.
When you're looking at it, and you're depleting your dopamine, I don't know if it's a storage or whatever, but like, it's every time you're looking at something, you get desensitized to it, and you get less of a dopamine spike every time you do it. So you start chasing something different. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about, how, some, I wouldn't even say just women, but like just men or women when they're sleeping with multiple partners, you know, I feel like they're chasing after something that they know is missing, and they just don't know how to find it. And every number that they climb up on that body count is just going to get harder and harder and harder to find what they're truly looking for.
Right.
So,
I was talking to my mom probably a month ago, and Lily was over and we were talking. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but my mom said something that kind of drew my attention. Is she talked about how when she was in high school, kids weren't running around having the same, like, casual sex wasn't as common as it was now. And I just thought about it, and not only is like everything thrown in your face on, like porn's thrown in your face through social media and all this, but then you go to school and it's so common to hear about, like, you got a friend group and there's people in your friend group who abuse like apps like Snapchat and Instagram to talk to other women, and they're having like a lot of casual sex. And I think that it just makes it even worse. Like, not only are people constantly having pornography thrown in their face, or like not even just like urges, like there's like different ways to exploit people on social media and television, movies. But not only is it that, it's also just in person, the people you're around. And I think that one of the best ways to avoid it is to hang out and be with like-minded people who have similar opinions as you do. Because I grew up with two sisters, and I was always a big fan of my sister. And I just, when I started to get in my teens, I just couldn't imagine someone else, or I couldn't imagine looking at someone's daughter that way or someone's sister that way, because I was so close with my sister. I just felt like that was a wrong connection to make. And when I hear people talk about the casual sex that they have and how they look at women, it's kind of, I haven't really had that problem, but there is, like, it is there. But I feel like I've always had a way to deter it. But I think that a lot of people don't have a lot of ways to, like, fight that urge, and it's always in their face.
well, it's important to have that accountability. Like, and if you're hanging out with a certain group and that's what they're celebrating, I mean, it's what it is nowadays. It's not just accepted; it's celebrated. And when you're hanging out with that type of group, you're going to reflect the type of people that you hang around.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible talks about iron sharpens iron. So if you are if you desire to have that strong relationship with God, you need to be around other men that want to have a strong relationship with God, because they are going to call you out the moment you step out of line. And you might not, or you're probably not going to like what you have to, or what they have to say, but they're going to tell you what you need to hear.
Yes.
So you need that accountability. Otherwise, you're just going to go the way of everybody else in that group. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things I hear people talk about nowadays, and I hate when they refer to it, like, well, Jesus hung around with sinners. Like, yes, he hung out with sinners, and he said it's not the healthy that need the doctors, the sick. Yeah. But he also rebuked them every time that they did something wrong. He told them to stop sinning. It wasn't an excuse for you to keep living in your sin.
Right.
So I just hear that more and more now. Like, people just use that excuse when they're talking to Christians. Well, Jesus would have hung out with sinners. Yes, he would have, but he also would have been telling them they need to live their lives different. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just goes back to we're trying to justify the way we're living. We know it's wrong. Mm-hmm. We don't want it to be. We enjoy it too much, but so we're going to justify why I'm doing it. Mm-hmm.
So Colton, you said you've always found ways to divert.
Yeah.
So what are some of those ways? Because there's going to be guys your age listening in, and what are some of those ways? Because even us older guys, I mean, because we struggle with it.
Well, it's not always successful. Like I'm not saying I'm perfect. I definitely have
Sure.
like fallen to the urges, but I think that not everyone has a woman in their life. Like I was around my mom and my sisters a lot when I was a younger kid, and when I was I think I was 10 years old, my sister got pregnant like when she just got out of high school, and I just heard my sisters talk about how guys look at them and all their friends said so horribly, and it made like my sisters upset, and I just cared about my sisters a lot, and I knew that's someone else's sister, and that's like my dad, that's someone else's daughter that you're looking at in that way. But I also think that if you feel like something's wrong, you should probably but it's hard to hold your self accountable and be disciplined all the time. Like you can try as hard as you can to prevent the urges and run away, but I feel like the best way is to keep people around you who will also keep you accountable, because you're not always going to be able to do that no matter how hard you try. And that's especially with how much it's thrown in your face. I think it's hard to stay disciplined and accountable. I think that the best way to do that is to be around people and grow with people too. Like you and your friend may not be well versed in Christianity, but they might have a belief. I think that making an attempt to grow with, I'm always around my friends or Lily or my family. I'm never really alone. So my family has never been more, this is the most we've gone to church and went over I feel like this is the most connected we've all been. Mm-hmm. And I think it's good to not only talk about exact topics of sex like this, but just how you can go throughout your daily life and think about and just talk to God throughout the day. Like if you're having a hard time, you can talk to him whenever you want to. Yeah. You don't have to say it out loud, but I think having an outlet for struggles is a good way to get through life, and having people around you who want you to do, I don't know how to say it, but they want you to be successful as well, and they want you to have a good life and to support you. And I think that when you have two people who agree on that and they both want to see each other succeed, I think it even makes it easier to avoid those temptations and get through them and hold each other accountable.
Well, accountability is a big part of that. I used to have an accountability partner that I gave him 10 questions. He could ask about any part of my life. He could ask more than the 10, but I gave him access to my marriage relationship, my financial relationship. One of the questions was, have you thought lustfully about another woman other than your wife? And note it was thought. It wasn't looked at. It's because the thought life is important for us. And then the last question I had him ask me was, have you lied to me in any of these previous questions? And, sometimes it's easy to kind of fudge the first time when a guy looks at you the second time and asks you. That's a lot harder. So when we talk about accountability, we need to be with people we trust. To one, not just say, oh, that's okay, we all mess up. The guys that I've had as accountability partners have called me on the carpet on a few times. They don't let me slip by with little pat answers. And that's what we need. So we need somebody in our life that's trusted, that we can share with, and that can ask us those questions, not just about our sex life, but about every area of our life. And that does help. That helps us to become better men. It really does. So proud of you for having a group around you that you can share with. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, you got any insight over there, Luke?
None that I can think of currently.
No. So, as excuse me. So, as somebody who is out of school, right, and you're into the real world,
I'm still in college though.
out of high school,
Yeah.
into the real world, how would you say your I want to say your struggles, but like the urges and the attacks and stuff like that from sexual temptation compared to what you're facing in like adolescence? Do you think it's worse, a little bit better,
No.
about the same?
Currently now, it's a lot less than what it used to be. Like I'll be 100%. It used to be like every day almost, which that was the worst part of my life, I'll admit. But it's gotten a lot better. Back then I didn't even fight it. Now I do. Which, like Colt mentioned, I try to find something to substitute it, something better. Which finding a substitute was probably the best thing to happen, because it gets rid of the thoughts more and more.
A healthy substitute.
Yes.
Yeah.
We don't want to want to make sure we emphasize healthy
Yes.
substitute.
One substitute, which I should start doing this now, could be reading your Bible or playing a game as well.
I,
That's it.
So I think we've talked about it on other episodes before, but like I've noticed personally, and it might just be obvious, and I'm just really slow, but the more that I intentionally get into the Bible and I'm reading it, the more it's not only easier to face the attacks that you face on a constant basis, but I feel like whatever I'm reading is directly related to what I'm going through at that time. And I can read the same passage 4 times at different points in life, and it'll resonate differently each of those times. So, yeah, I would definitely emphasize getting into the Bible and reading, because, and that's how God's communicating with us, right? So,
Yeah, the more of the words you have inside of you, the more the Holy Spirit has to work with. And the Bible, you talked about reading it and it meaning saying something to you different each time. The Bible says it's alive and active, and that's just proof of that. That even sometimes passages we've known for a long time, you read over them again, and God says, "Wait a minute, think about it this way." And it's like, oh. And it's a whole different, I don't want to say it's a different word, but he gives you a different thought or a deeper understanding, I guess, of what that meant.
and one thing I started doing more recently is, like, before I start reading, I try to pray, and I try to ask God, like, help me to understand or lead me in here where you need me to go, I guess, or help me to understand what I'm reading, and so I can kind of transition it to an action.
All right.
I guess. Kind of a less or more elaborate way of saying than what I actually pray, but I try to get in the habit of, like, show me what you want me to know, I guess. And then I found myself more and more, like, when I get to something and like, a question will pop up in my head, instead of just brushing past it and just keep reading, I'll, like, dive deeper into that question.
Right.
And then you'd be surprised of where it leads you.
Yep.
And so I would say just be, like, more deliberate about that. Ask for the guidance. You're not going to be able to fight it on your own. Excuse me. You're not going to be able to fight these temptations on your own. You're going to need that strong relationship with God, and just praying, not just praying a prayer or the same prayer over there. I mean, have that conversation That's what I would recommend. I mean, it might just be me getting older and more boring, but I would recommend for like the more middle-aged man, just improving your relationship with God. I think that's going to be the best way for you to really fight the struggle.
No, I don't think just a middle-aged man. I think for any of us, we expect, I guess in our society, we kind of expect our young people to kind of go and live a wilder life, and then we settle down when we get older. But one of the things we have to realize when in the book of Daniel, he's taken from his homeland, and he goes to Persia, and they want to convert him. Basically, is the word. They want to convert him, and so they're going to teach him all about their culture and their language and their foods, and he refuses to partake in the food. Says, just give me vegetables and water. We'll see. So 10 days later, he looks a lot better than everybody else. He and his friends. One of the things, we think Daniel was an older, we think of Daniel as being an older man because he made that decision. Daniel was probably 15, 16, 17 years of age. He's a young man and was able to make that. So I think sometimes we expect too little of our younger guys, and they struggle with the same things here that we do. So I would recommend for younger guys get in the Word too.
And I would like to commend Colton. I mean, going off of what you're saying here tonight, like you are, as far as spiritual maturity, I would say you're way farther than I ever was at your age. I will say that. But I feel like just engaging with kids my kids' age, that high school age, you are pretty spiritual mature. You're past, far beyond your age, I would say. So I know we all have room to improve, but you have that going for you, and just keep going, because I mean it's going to the battles are not going to get easier.
No.
But if you can just keep growing and maturing in your faith, it's going to make it easier.
Yeah.
So I would say good job.
Well, I think my parents really had a lot to do with that. A lot of my family, we didn't go to church every Sunday when I was earlier in life, but Kit, remember Kit?
Yeah.
I loved Kit, so I always wanted to go to Sunday school when I don't remember when I was baptized, but I would watch YouTube. I always like to watch YouTube videos to educate myself, but I would watch YouTube videos about people talking about the Bible, and I just really caught my attention at a younger age. But I mean, I hate to say this, but I've kind of lost I never forgot what I learned, but I've kind of lost how I used to do it all the time. Like, I don't read the Bible every day. I don't talk to God every day. Like, I think just keeping a consistent connection helps a lot, but sometimes I don't. But I think at a young age, I feel like I was attracted to it. Like, when I went to church and when you're around people who are fun, it's like, I don't know, it just really made me want to come back to church every Sunday and be a part of it. And I just liked talking about God and hearing about it. The stories especially, I liked hearing the stories, but I don't really remember them as well. But I think when your family is involved and you're not just going to church because your family goes, or you're just going with your family because they want you to go, but when you actually start to enjoy it and being around people like Sunday school and the youth group and stuff, I think that really helped me out. Yeah. Like learning stuff. And I like to listen to podcasts, and you hear people talk about, and then I think something that really helped me out a lot was The Awakening and Bulletproof. Yeah. It's just they talk about things that are so real to you. Like, I didn't think they were going to talk about pornography when I went, but then they really put a lot of things into perspective for you, and you just sit and think about it, and it always stays in the back of your mind. And you just, when you go to those types of events, it's like God's telling you something. Like, it's not on accident that they talk about a certain topic that really resonates with you, and you go home and you think about it constantly. I think keeping the thoughts from, like, the talks that you hear from the Bulletproof event and the Awakening, and when you take notes, I think it's okay to go through and look at them. I think that hearing other people's testimonies is just as good as looking, not saying just as good as looking at the Bible. I think it helped me a lot, because not only were they talking about God, but they were talking about how they struggled with certain things as well.
Right.
And I really am thankful that my mom signed me up to go to the Awakening, because I did not want to go. I did not want to go that bad. But when she did, and Aaron Willison sponsored me, he picked me up. I was really kind of didn't know what to expect. But when I went, I had a few friends from school to go to. I wasn't in a group with them, but just being around people who have the same struggles as you have, and they talk about it, you get a lot. It's a lot of good advice, and you just grow deeper with God. I think that's a very good thing that they got going on.
Right. Yeah. Talking with other people really helps, because one of the things Satan wants us to do in any area of our lives where we're struggling or where we're sinning is to make us think we're the only ones going through it. And then when you get together and you find out, oh, wait a minute, he's got the same problem, or he's struggling with this too, then it kind of draws you together, and you got somebody to stand with and help be that buffer that we all need around us. So yeah, our friends make a big difference in how we live. And the fact that you listen to podcast with them talking about the Bible, that's a good thing, because the Bible is, you and I think about reading it.
Yeah.
In the days when it was done, it was either on a scroll or on a letter that was sent to the churches, and it was read out loud. So it was the word of God that people were getting, and not necessarily a preacher's comment, a commentary on it. And so the Bible's meant to be heard. So anytime you can, I'm not talking about you don't have to be physically reading it. Sometimes just listen to it. That'll help. But yeah, being with other people helps.
Yeah.
To know.
I think it helps to hear, like, sometimes when you read the Bible, it's like, how does this relate to now?
Yeah.
But when you hear people talk about it and then they relate it to their life, it's like, okay, well, that puts other things that I've read into perspective as well.
Yeah.
And it just gives you a different view on how you read it. And I think that just being around it, and being around the Bible and hearing the word, or in as many ways as possible, is very beneficial. But sometimes you'll fail to, like, I also listen to, like, Joe Rogan. I like podcasts in general, hearing people talk. That's why I'm so happy to do this. I love listening to podcasts, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. But I think if you take some time and an intention, like, not only can you accidentally scroll upon people talking about God on, like, TikTok, or you'll see it on TV sometimes, but if you go out of your way to look for it, I think it grows. It'll just start to grow into your schedule, and, like, I think it also helps relieve a lot of stress. A lot of people have a lot of stress, and I think talking to God, and just, like he said, when you go through and you find something that you didn't think would relate to what you're going through, and it does, but then you go through and read the same thing again, you're struggling with something else. You find that it helps.
Yeah.
And I just think that being around that as much as possible is great.
Yep. I agree.
So I think we've covered a lot on this topic. So as we're wrapping up, what would be just one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who is going through this struggle, whether it be a believer, non-believer? If you were talking to somebody, or you're counseling them, or they're just kind of pouring out to you, and you have a chance to kind of help them out, what would be the one piece of advice that you would want to make sure that they took away from it?
I would probably want them to, if I was talking to someone about this and they came to me. That's a hard question. Man. I'd probably ask them what makes them want to, like, how did they come upon it? Like, man, I never really had someone talk to me about it before.
Now that you actually it's the whole point of having this podcast is we can attack these topics. So now that you've actually had the chance of talking about it out loud to other people, do you find it easier to be able to, or harder, or about the same, to be able to like maybe go forward and?
I think it.
Hey, go ahead. Oh my God. No, you're good. Go ahead.
I think it makes it easier because I didn't really think that this was a problem with a lot of people. I thought this was like a newer generation thing.
No.
But
No.
I mean, this really.
Absolutely not.
I've heard a lot of people talk about the statistics of pornography now, and I'm like, oh, now it's really bad. And then, but you go back and watch, like, that 70s show. There's a few episodes where Eric gets a Playboy from the library, and I was like, okay, like, maybe that's just like an odd, like, but no, hearing this, I mean, I think it'll make it a lot easier for me to address the feelings, because I thought I was the only person who was feeling. So I went to the Awakening. I was shocked when they brought it up, because I didn't really feel like it was a common thing.
Yeah.
I think that the best piece of advice is probably to find people who are struggling, but they don't want to fall to the urges, or like succumb to the urges, and find someone who is willing. I think if I was talking to someone who didn't believe in God, it'd be hard to just tell them, hang out with Christians. But I mean, if you are a Christian, I think the best way to do it is to find someone like-minded as you and who knows it's wrong, and they can hold you accountable and you can hold them accountable. Because I think having like an accountability partner and checking up on each other, you're not alone. And even if you do fail, someone's there to correct you. And I think you can have that, but you can't be upset when someone corrects you.
Right.
You have to be open-minded, and you have to be accepting, because everyone's going to fail in life, no matter how much you don't want to. But if you have someone there with you to go through it with and to keep you accountable, I think it makes it a lot easier and a lot better. And you learn a lot of stuff from them. Like you'll learn something that your friend learned, and you're like, that could help me too.
Right.
They talk about something that could help them avoid stuff and flee the situation, or just avoid the situation entirely. And I think having someone else there just lets you know you're not alone and can help you go through that.
Right.
I think that's good.
I think that's pretty good. I would agree with what you said. I think the one thing I would tell people, the first thing I would tell people is that you're not alone. Not the only one struggling in this.
Yeah.
You talked about accountability partner or group.
Yeah.
Either one, you just need to find people that can hold you accountable and that are going to love you and pick you up and correct you when you need to be corrected. So I agree wholeheartedly with that. The other thing I would say to some people, that if you can't control the phone, set it down.
Yeah.
I mean, we all have to carry one anymore.
Yeah.
I understand that, but you don't have to be looking at it. You can turn it over and set it down on the table beside you, because it's so accessible anymore to us, and nobody else knows, because we do it in the privacy of our homes.
Yeah.
And so you may be struggling and nobody around you knows. So that would be the thing I would add, is put down the phone.
Yeah.
Luke, you got a piece of advice you'd give anybody?
So, key takeaways from this as well. Like Colton and Bill both mentioned, find an accountability partner, or accountability buddy, as I usually say. That's one of the main things. For a Christian, stay in the Bible more, definitely. And then for someone who's not a Christian, find a healthy substitute.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all very good recommendations. I agree with everything. I mean, everything that I was going to say, I'm pretty sure you guys mentioned it. As far as Christian, just make sure you're constantly improving your relationship with God, because that's going to, the stronger the relationship you have, the less susceptible you're going to be to these types of attacks. But you're going to fail. You're going to fall. You're not the only one going through it. So as long as you have somebody that's holding you accountable and not just letting you get away with it. I mean, you're going to fall, you're going to fail. We're all human. But having that person like, you know what? That's fine. I'm here. What are we going to do to make sure you don't do it again? And Bill brought up a good point as far as your phone, putting your phone down. Pretty sure they have apps and stuff now that will let somebody have access to like how much time you're on like a specific app. Mm-hmm. So, or anytime you open that app. So if you have somebody you trust that with this, the struggle, they can be alerted every time you open up Instagram or whatever. And not saying that every time you open that app up, you're looking up bad stuff, but if you're struggling with it and with the way that algorithms are written, you're going to find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going as far as like just making sure you delete it off your phone. Like if you're struggling with it, get rid of it. It goes back to what Jesus said. Like if if your right hand causes you to sin, it's better to cut it off.
Yeah.
So just try to remove as much from your life that is causing the attacks. If whether that's apps, any kind of like literature or movies or whatever, or even people, get rid of it. That's so. I think we've kind of covered everything we need to cover on this topic. So, you guys have anything else you want to add right before we leave?
I don't think so.
All right. Unless you guys have anything else, I think we've reached the end of it.
I think we're good.
Bill, do you mind praying us out?
Sure. Let's pray. Father God, we come before you and we just pray that the Father, you be with us. Sexual temptation and lust are something that consume us as men, and we don't want it to. We want you to be the Lord of our life. So, Father, if there's anybody that's listening that is struggling, if there's anybody in this room that is struggling, Father, may we, first of all, they know that they're not alone, that you're aware of it, that we're aware that others struggle, and we just pray, Father, that we can come to you for forgiveness, for strength, for mercy, and Father, we might not be afraid to share with you and to share with others. Father, you created sex to be enjoyable between a husband and wife, to unite them together. And we pray, Father, that we're able to stand strong to always proclaim, Father, that your way is always best. In the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord, we do pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you guys for joining us on this episode. And
glad to join.
We'll hopefully have you guys back soon. But for everybody else, thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you on the next episode.